Happy Friday and welcome to Miami View Women. I'm so glad to be here. Happy Galentine's Day. Happy Chinese New Year. It's the year of the ox. And happy Black History Month. I mean, all of that in one day. I feel like today is extremely special. But it's not only special because of those amazing days that we get to celebrate here, but also because we have our guest, Joan Godoy. Welcome. So good to see you.
Likewise, ladies, thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you, Joan, for taking the time to come on today. Miami View Women, the show that I've had the pleasure of co-hosting at times and hopping in to produce at times with Carolina Castillo and Irela Bagay, and just the amazing women that we've had on this show throughout the last few months that I've been on it. And to have you on today is just another amazing moment. I'm just constantly in love with this show and what we do here, highlighting the amazing work of women in the Miami community. I've met you at the Cambridge Innovation Center through your work at Radical Partners, and we've also had the fun times of exchanging clothes at Sustainable Clothing Swaps. So I love that you're into that, and also just being out in the community doing other things. So let's dive in. We have so many topics to talk about with your work and what you're up to. And how have you been through this whole pandemic time?
There are so many ways to respond to that question. I think, Miriam, everybody could relate with the idea of a roller coaster. And I mean that in a good way and then in a bad way, right? Like, it's been tremendously emotional, both personally and professionally, managing your team, the culture. It's been intense and rough for all of us to adapt so quickly to all of the things that are happening with our families, with our work, etc. So I would remiss to say that hasn't been the case. But on the other side, it's also been very positive, especially for us in the social impact space. There was a disruption that's very exciting for us, and that it opens a lot of opportunities in terms of changing the systems, transforming how we saw things, who had power, who didn't, how are we making decisions, etc. So that's why I literally say that it's a roller coaster, because some days are better than others. But overall, I would say that 2020 was definitely a good experience overall, because of that disruption, because of that change. It allowed us to focus on what matters to us personally, but then systemically or socially, it also allowed us to focus on what matters and what are some of the social challenges that we're still very behind on to solve.
Yeah. One of the things, because that I want to kind of, if I'm getting this correctly, and I want to get the dates clear, because also, don't we owe you somewhat of a congratulations, because this position is new, right? New-ish.
Yes.
Because your predecessor has now gone on to a very strong and powerful position. Let's acknowledge another woman of strength in our community. When did that happen?
Yes. Okay. So Rebecca Fishman-Lipsey is the proud founder of Radical Partners. And then back in June of 2020, she assumed the role to be the CEO and the president of the Miami Foundation here, which is one of the biggest community foundations in town. So at the same time, I stepped up and assumed the role as an executive director at Radical Partners. So it's been more than 8 months.
Congratulations.
Yeah, totally. And in the middle of a pandemic.
Awesome. Yes. It's incredible. This pandemic has been a wild ride. Just like you were saying, it's like a huge roller coaster. I have to tell you, I'm happy to say that my grandmother and my great-grandmother got their second dose of the vaccine. So I'm just feeling relieved and happy today, but it's been tough. It's been really hard. But what I really want to know too, because I don't know too much of Radical Partners, only by reading it, and I'm just meeting you for the first time. What is your mission? Like, what is your end goal? What is your end game?
Okay. So I would say our end game is to build stronger communities. In all honesty, we truly believe that between a combination of leaders, resources, power, and the people, including with their own power, we can strengthen our communities. And we do that through three types of work. One is that we invest in the leaders doing the work. So we have some leadership development programs. Secondly, we engage the community in initiatives like Vote Miami, for example. Last year was all about making sure that people knew what to do, who to vote for, and get their voice heard. But for many of those in Miami that cannot vote, including myself, what could we do, right? We could still learn, we could still engage, we could still mobilize our own people to make sure that we're electing the leaders that we want. And the third arm of work is that we have the privilege of working with other organizations, other philanthropists, other corporations that have very good intentions, very good ideas in terms of how to solve for certain problems. And we help them with the design of those solutions, with the process of implementing those solutions. So in the end, we do say that we are a social impact accelerator because we try to spot what's already happening, what social impact initiatives are there, and we help them scale that impact and grow that impact in a way that we don't think of growth only vertically, right? More money, more people, more popularity. It's also about better impact, right? So sometimes it's to that sideline, sometimes it's reshuffling, sometimes it's shrinking a bit to make sure that you're grounded in why, and you're grounded in what you're doing and what you're doing it for, so that you can accelerate and scale that impact. So that's what we do on a daily basis.
I love something that you said. Two things. One, that you last year helped people vote. And I want to know, did you tell them who to vote for and why? Or did you tell them you need to just go out and vote? So that's the first thing. And the other thing that I found really interesting here that you said, you didn't say this right now, but I've read on what you're doing is you measure so you measure lives you are able to transform, not what you're getting, but success is a measure of the lives that you are able to transform, which is so impactful. So I just want to know, did you tell people how to vote and who to vote for, or just go out and vote?
We didn't. And we didn't tell them go to vote. We basically just told them, look, this is your power. This is the information. Do with it what you think is right? So to be more specific, Vote Miami is an initiative that, yes, was steered by Radical Partners, but we host in collaboration with other organizations in town, including, again, the Miami Foundation, Knight Foundation, the Miami Herald, and the many nonprofits that are working on civic engagement. And basically what Vote Miami was this online compilation of simple resources for folks. And going back to those best intentions and those ideas that people sometimes have, there are plenty of organizations working towards civic engagement, either registering folks, either encouraging people to become US citizens, helping them out, etc. But sometimes we're so much in the weeds that we forget that information is complex. For those people who do not care about being civically engaged, or that, in all honesty, don't have the privilege to care because they're dealing with 2 or 3 jobs, they're doing other things that civic engagement hasn't been their priority or cannot be because of time, because of resources, etc. So Vote Miami, try to identify what is it out there, how can we compile that and make it simple in a 4th grade level for those of us who aren't in the civic engagement to understand when are the elections happening, what are my options, what are all these positions, right? Because sometimes you read about municipalities and mayors, and Miami has so many mayors that you're like, whoa, like it's very complex to understand, even if you want to. So Vote Miami is a nonpartisan initiative that compiled and simplified all of that information for people so that we could say, first, register if you can, learn as much as you can, and then mobilize your people. So all the way from compiling those resources to providing social media images for people to share, I voted, or I cannot vote, but you can, so make your voice heard because of me. So it implied a lot of different things, and we aspire to activate Vote Miami when there are key moments in our city to make sure that we're all caring and doing something about it.
I love that. I remember we were trying to get you guys on the show when you, someone from Radical Partners back then, when you
Back
were
in
rolling
October,
that
yes.
out. And I love that you provide the social images for those even that can't vote. Like even youth who are so active on social media can use that, because I feel like they deserve a voice in some capacity, and they can start to participate in that process of our elections. And it's interesting what you said. I just came off of a conversation on Clubhouse
Uh-huh.
where we were talking about how we design our public spaces to kind of support civic engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started the room because I wanted to share and get knowledge and listen to those that are designing these spaces, since I'm not an architect myself. But my experience when I go into a commissioner meeting, for example, and being a strong woman, but still I feel scared when I go in there, because it's
And
like,
lost, to
oh
be
my
honest.
God, all these powerful people like that. But actually, hey, those were people, they work for me, like, why are you sitting so far above me? Why am I sitting here down low and on this little podium? And uh, who's thinking about how we design these spaces to encourage people and feel welcome and at home? And how do we make sure that there's support for families when they go, so that they can take the time off to participate? And we got into a whole bunch of different things. So I'm curious if you know of any people that are working on this kind of stuff, just for my own personal interests.
Yes. So first, let me start with our current mayor, right? Miami-Dade County mayor, Daniela Levine Cava. She comes from having like a very strong years of experience, I would say, in the social impact arena. And we see her doing things that we haven't seen before in Miami. And one of those is this campaign that she just launched called Thrive 305. And she's basically asking constituents, meaning all of us who live in Miami-Dade County, tell me what you want. Tell me what you need. Of course, she cannot make any promises, because that, of course, involves budgeting and dealing with other decision-making powers, etc. But at least she's asking the people in a very simple form that we can all fill out in different languages and say, we need this, we want this, this is what we're worried about. So I am proud to see her listening, and I'm proud to see her and her team curious in terms of what are the needs of the people who aren't still a part of her network. So I see certain strides from public government right now. And I hope that will only grow, because talking about public innovation is becoming a thing worldwide. Going back to your second question, Carolina, I like to believe that most people in the world are good. Most people in the world have good intentions. But we can only see what we know. We can only see what we've learned in the past. So to your point, Miriam, all those systems, all those big rooms, and even the buildings, they were built hundreds of years ago. And whomever is managing those spaces and whomever is continuing to build those spaces, that's what they've seen, right? So that is why it's important for us to bring other voices to the table, for us to raise our hands and say, like, look, please just like level me up, right? So that you and I can have a conversation that's horizontal. But it might not even occur to them. That's one. Or secondly, if that's what they learned, if that's the structure they learned, and that's the hierarchy they learned, and that's the power they crave, you will have some people in those positions that enjoy being up there and enjoy talking to the people that way. So we could go in so many directions, but I'm going to let's focus on the Thrive 305. I think it's the beginning of that. And then secondly, there are organizations, local organizations, working around civic engagement, mobilizing people and reminding us that people should be at the core of innovation. People should be at the core of road building, bus systems, etc. But it will take us a while for that to become the norm.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that, because at the end of the day, everything is education driven, which was what you were saying. if you have the knowledge, if you have the education, you are going to then elect those people that then are going to think about those spaces and then are going to think about the voices of, the community coming in, right? But it really, I think the root cause of all of this, which is what you were saying, is education, knowledge, empowerment, and empowering our community to really make an impact, right? So I used to work with Organized Florida, and we did also Get Out the Vote, and everything was based on education. This is what's going on. This is the policies. These are the people. And we also didn't focus on who you need to vote for, but of course, you don't want to vote against yourself, really, is what we were mainly saying. And you mentioned something really cool, Miriam, of kids and the people that can't vote, like Joan can't vote, right? And so I have a really funny story. My daughter's 11 years old, right? And she's seen me with, Women Vote Florida, and she saw me as the president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce, and she's been in it since she was 5, okay? And it was pretty amazing to see her. She was invited to speak as just a young activist who cannot vote, but still wants to make an impact and still wants to make a difference. And she was just telling these bunch of adults, it was like 11 adults from all sorts of different backgrounds. And Camila, my daughter, was simply just saying, vote for our future. Vote for me. I can't vote. Vote for climate justice. Vote for women's rights. Vote for LGBTQ. Vote for civil rights. And she was pleading with them. And I remember one of the adults in there said, this is not normal. Our children should not be pleading with us to be engaged, to be civically engaged, to be focused, to be voting. Voting is a privilege that people have taken advantage of, and they decide, I'm not going to vote this year because it doesn't impact me or it doesn't affect me, because they are, like Miriam and I have spoken about before, they don't trust the system. And I get it. And that's where education comes in. And that's where people like you, Joan, which I'm just so privileged to meet today, are really in the fight, saying, we're going to educate you. We're going to empower you. We're going to give you knowledge. And you are going to take your power and you are going to make that difference, because that is how these spaces get changed. And that is how people like Danielle Levine Cava, our first woman mayor, of Miami-Dade County, gets to be on that place. So I love this. And I want to know, we have someone that's commenting and tuning in. Do you see that, Miriam?
Yes, I do. This, I think, Adrina is from your team, so we love her. I also work with Adrina on the 1 Million Cups Miami squad, so I'm so glad she's tuning in and watching.
Yay! Welcome.
Please chime in with any comments and questions that you have too. And I've taken some of these educational workshops that Radical Partners gives over the past few years. Can you talk a little bit about those? Because I was always very impressed with every step of the way, like how professional the check-in was and the email confirmation, just the little minor details. It was just very kind of classy. And I was like, I really like this. And then after the feedback surveys that you guys would do, really wanting to know, did we help you today? And they were free. Don't forget that. So are you guys still even doing those?
Yes. So let me just conclude on some of the things that Carolina said, and I'm happy to go into the leadership development aspect, because Carolina, there's something you said there is we don't trust the system. And I think it's important to emphasize that, because it is not our fault that we don't care, right? That something happened throughout our generations that we stopped believing in the system. And Miami has a very interesting combination of many people coming from different Latin American countries where we do not trust our governments and we don't want to invest our time and our energy in governments. And many of us are fearful of our governments. So that cultural and historical baggage that we bring is real. And we need to acknowledge that for starters, right? So yes, we believe that people have the power, and yes, people should be electing who should be sitting at the table. But the reality is that we stopped believing in that power. And generations like ours, we never learned to be civically engaged, because especially for me, coming from Guatemala, like civic engagement or political presence, it was silenced because of the internal conflict. So I never learned it. And I think it's important to say that, because for whenever we're creating the civic engagement initiatives, we need to acknowledge that, and we need to meet people where they are. And that is sometimes what we forget in this idealism of empowering the people and people having the power. We forget where we are, what we can do, what we cannot. And that's why we need to simplify the language to make things more accessible, because we don't know. The reality is that we don't know, and we need to relearn it. So just wanted to emphasize that, so that whomever's watching, it's not all on you. It's sometimes it's in the government, the private sector, public sector, and that's why we're all relearning and reshaping our systems. So that said,
before you go on, meet people where they're at. So you can't, I love that. I love that, because I've been talking about that with a lot of my network, and you can't tell people just go vote, just go vote, just go vote, or you're a communist, or you're a communist, or you're a radical, or you're radical. Like, you cannot just attack people, or you cannot just assume that they're going to think a certain way because you feel a certain way. You have to meet them where they're at. Like you said, I'm Colombian, Latina. I grew up in Miami, Florida. So and I grew up with my Cubans. I really did. My Cubans are my family, right? So they come from Cuba, a communist country where they've learned communism. They've learned not to trust the system. And the Republicans have done a great job by, feeding them communism. But what happens is that I feel like maybe the radicals or the left or even the Democrats, meet them where they're at. Try to understand where they're coming from first before you start feeding them other things. Like, understand where they're coming from, understand their culture, understand their traumas, and then try to figure out and bring them into your engagement, into your dialogue, into the democracy. And why are they fearful of Democrats? And those whys are so important, because there's historical, like you're saying, historical references that they have in their minds and in their hearts and in their souls that are traumas. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them have trauma from leaving Cuba, being separated from their families, the Bay of Pigs, all of that. And so once you meet them where they're at, then you can start the dialogue. Then you can start understanding and just unifying, I think, a little bit more. So I love that. Thank you for saying that.
Yes, no, thank you. And you're very right. And it sounds beautiful, but it's very hard.
It is.
Because we all carry truths. But if you want people to believe your truth, it means that people want you to believe their truth as well. So I always say, like, every truth is relative. Because it is your truth because of what you've seen, because of what you learned. And when we go to the core in terms of what we all want to be healthy. We all want to be loved. We all want to have opportunities and access. So when we peel some of those layers and some of those labels that we've assigned to each other, we might not agree, but we might not continue to disagree and disrespect each other and hate each other without any background. So I know we're going to talk about the 10 Days of Connection later, which is an initiative that's precisely for that. But I don't want to leave you hanging, Miriam. And I really appreciate what you said about some of our community workshops and our leadership development initiatives. And I think it's similar, right? Like when Rebecca founded Radical Partners, it came out of that. It came out of realizing that all these people were leading organizations, were literally leading teams of dozens of people, and they were burnt out. They were tired. They couldn't afford Harvard Business Reviews courses, etc. So out of that process and out of understanding where people were especially leaders, we try to compile what already works somewhere else, and what doesn't, we try to create. So then we try to package things in a way that's practical and tactical for people, and we make it chewable and applicable to whatever you're working on. So I like that what you said, and that's literally our ultimate goal. Like, how can you leave that workshop with something that's really going to matter to you, and that's something that feels tailored to you, because that's our ultimate goal. And the other thing that I want to emphasize there, that we've been trying to recognize with our teams as well, going back to your previous question, Carolina, is yes, we focus on people. Yes, we focus on purpose. Yes, we focus on results, but we focus a lot on the process for us to get there, because that's how change happens, right? Through these processes, through efficient and effective processes. And we live in a society that wants to see numbers, that wants to hear about what we succeeded on. And the reality is that most of the change and most of the important things happen in that process. And processes are slow most of the times. So at Radical Partners, we take that process very seriously, and we think of things as a journey. How are we starting? So that starts with a pre-survey. That starts with the email that we said, hey, Miriam, we saw you. We know that you're coming. We know that you're working on this. We're getting ready for you. Then yes, the workshop happens. But then after that, we want to see how you're doing. Was it helpful? Was it not? How can we improve? How can we keep supporting you? Because you are the one doing the hard work. And we want to make sure that you don't feel alone and that someone has your back, both on moral support and skill building.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for, just thank you. Because they're amazing.
What are you focusing on right now? I know you had told us a little bit something about 10 days of connection.
Yes, ma'am. So whomever is watching, really, I mean it, either it's your abuelita or Camila, your daughter, like there's something for her. And then during the 10 days of connection, it is an initiative that started proudly in Miami, Florida, 5 years ago, right after the past elections. There was this level of divisiveness, right? Like there was permission for us to be rude to one another, for us to be hateful to one another. And I think it happened again, unfortunately. So it was like, how can we fix that? And the reality is that, speaking of those bubbles that we were talking about a while ago, there aren't a lot of safe spaces where you can learn about people that think differently from you. There aren't a lot of spaces where you can ask awkward questions, where you can ask the things that you're like not really sure. I have my doubts about transgender people. I have my doubts about Haitians in Miami. How do I ask those questions? How do I meet them where they are? How do I learn from them and share what I think I believe or what I think is true? So the 10 days of connection comes to be with that idea. How can we create connection experiences where people get to, first of all, coincide with people that they don't regularly do so? And secondly, how can they engage in a respectful conversation where they're both agreeing to disagree and to try to seek to understand the other side? So under that premise, for 10 days, from May 1st to May 10th, we, and I say we, not only Radical Partners, but 200 organizations in town, raise their hand and say, I am going to host a connection experience for people to come to this space. Now it's a virtual space, to learn and engage in conversation. And to give you some examples, that has looked like interfaith breakfasts, for example, where a rabbi comes with a priest and they invite everybody to just join them for breakfast. That means the Young Democrats and Young Republicans hosting a happy hour, where they can talk about the things that they believe in. It looks like people from Coconut Grove and the more affluent part of Coconut Grove go to the Black Grove and figure out how the Grove is different depending on what blocks you live in. So it looks in many different ways where you can learn about a movie, read a book, but also meet with people that think differently from you. Again, on the premise that once you know them, you might not agree, but you won't hate them. So it's a way of fighting discrimination, fighting hate, and hopefully fostering not only kindness, but empathy around. So everybody is welcome to join, either to host a dinner yourself or to host a Zoom party yourself, but most importantly, to come and learn and listen from all the connection experiences that all the wonderful organizations that are part of the initiative are going to be curating for all of us.
And I can totally vouch for those as well. I have been to them, and yes, they always have food there. It's just so great. You know, like, I've met amazing people at 10 Days of Connection events over the last few years. So I love those.
So your next one is in May.
Correct. It's always May 1st to May 10th. It's going to be year 5. And based on what happened last year, it seems like we're ready to have more intense conversations for whomever is ready to talk about race, to talk about politics, to talk about money. For those of you who aren't or who don't believe those things are challenges that we need to explore, there are going to be things for you as well, either for you to watch documentaries, for you to go learn about a new neighborhood that you've never been to. So there are going to be different types of activities for everybody so that you engage in whatever you're ready to engage in.
I really do believe that is so powerful. And I thank you for bringing that into Miami, because I feel that when we share our stories, people understand us a little bit better, might even connect with us a little bit more, because the first thing that we do when we see someone is we judge. Oh, look, she's blonde. Oh, she has an accent, or she doesn't have an accent, or she's white, or she's black, or she looks affluent, you know, but you have no idea where they came from, what their traumas are, what their sacrifices were, you know, and we were talking a little bit about this before, you know, we went live. And I feel, you know, even Miriam and I, you know, working together, we've gotten to know each other more and learn more about each other. And it's extraordinary, because then you really understand. So it's kind of like, take the time to listen, take the time to, you know, maybe not understand, but at least listen and see where they're coming from, you know, before you judge. And I know we all judge. But when you share those stories, it just brings this level of connection. And you said it right, at, you know, at the beginning, before we went live, you said you won't hate them, because you see them as a person, you see them as a human, and you understand their background and why they think this certain way that they do. And so I love this 10 Days of Connection. I'm really going to go in there and research some more, because I'm really interested in that. I think it's powerful. And it's a form of maybe even healing and unifying, you know, and understanding all at once. So I'm very excited that you have that, and you're offering that here in Miami. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Before we go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that we really need to thank all the organizations that co-host with us. So if you're curious, you can go to www.10daysofconnection.org. Right now, you will see very basic information on what's happening this year. If you're interested in hosting a connection experience yourself, because you could host a neighborhood block party, right? Physically distanced right now, so that you know who lives across the street, all the way to hosting a conversation with your family, to talk about topics that you might not agree on. So we're still in the planning phase and creating all those resources for everybody. So stay tuned either through our website or our social media, which is 10DOC, and we'll take it from there.
Dina!
Yes, Dina! She came in the right moment, because she's MCCJ is one of the founders of the 10 Days of Connection, Carolina. So Dina has been sharing and spreading the word of the 10 days since 2017.
Oh my God. It is so funny how interconnected we are. So I know Dina Allende from 20 years ago, where I was working for Deco Drive at WSVN, and she was a publicist and a PR person at the time who would pitch me stories. And we've been the best, amazing friends. Es colombiana, igual que yo, and we've been amazing friends, and our lives have really aligned. I've met her late brother, And we've I love you, Dina. Thank you for being here. Mwah! It's so awesome how our lives just interconnect, that we all know each other in some way, somehow. That just made my day.
And I don't know, Dina, but I'm happy too. Listen, this conversation has been so empowering today, and I don't want to end without asking about Cammie's art today, because I'm her biggest fan.
Yes,
so
yes.
What has she got?
So Cammie has a heart, very abstract sort of heart. I thought it would be perfect for Galentine's Day, right? And she opened up an Instagram account. Well, I opened it up for her because she's only 11. So, we've got restrictions over here. It's called Cammie. Let me see. Cammie Art Life. Let me see. And, COVID, we were talking earlier about COVID, Joan, and really my daughter, when we were Cammie Art Life on IG,
I got it there.
when we were doing quarantine, she started painting, like just painting and expressing herself through painting. And it was so therapeutic and so beautiful. And so every week that we're on the show, I just feature one of her artworks. I'm not selling them or anything like that. It's just makes me happy, and it's just supporting her expression. And I'm a mom. She's always in my heart, and I take her everywhere I go. So thanks for asking.
Definitely. Thank you, Joan. We have to have you back on, yes, I believe, to just continue this conversation. I really appreciate everyone for tuning in, and we've got an exciting episode just coming up right after this because of Black History Month. We're gonna be doing some double features all month long, it seems. So stay tuned on the channel. In about 15 minutes or so, 23 minutes or so, we're gonna tune it up again, and we're gonna have a new guest, same outfits, at least for me.
Me too.
Listen, Carolina, you every week. I don't know. You're a mom, okay? You working? Like, how do you show up? Like, literally, I was like, okay, baseball cap it is. We're just gonna slap this on.
Plan. You know what it is? It works on Fridays. I will wake up extra early and then do my hair so it can have the curls. Other than that, so I planned my Fridays really well so I can actually do my hair because it takes a little bit. But you look fabulous. I love you. And Joan, this has been amazing, and we need to do this again. I mean, your energy is fierce, and I really want to get more involved with you because I feel that you bring so much depth. It's not just like you were saying, the process is so unique. And I've been in these spaces a lot, with different organizations, and your approach is just so unique and so precise that I'm in love with it. So I'm definitely going to reach out to you more.
Thank you, Carolina. As I said at the beginning, we truly believe that everybody has a certain type of power. And if we really want to solve the way things are, we need everybody's power. So thank you again for the invitation, and we welcome you to join during the 10 days and beyond. We shall see what we come up with.
Thank you for joining us. Happy Friday, everyone. See you in 23 minutes. Bye.